Hi there. My name is Aria Vale, and if you're reading this, buckle up, because my life went from picture perfect to train wreck faster than you can say, I do. I'm a graphic designer based in Portland, Oregon, a city that smells like freshly ground coffee beans and overpriced avocado toast. Life was simple for me. Wake up early, sketch logos for clients who think they're visionaries, and come home to my husband, Callan Drake. Callan, he's the kind of guy people envy from afar. With his chiseled jawline, tailored suits, and charm that could sell ice to an Eskimo, he seemed too good to be true. And guess what? He was. But let's not skip ahead. I'll get to that part soon enough. For now, all you need to know is that our marriage felt solid. Or at least I thought it did. Oh, and then there's my sister, Seraphina. Or Sera as everyone calls her. She's 2 years younger, drop-dead gorgeous, and has this magnetic personality that makes people gravitate toward her. Growing up, she was the golden child, the one teachers loved, boys chased, and parents bragged about. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, always trying to prove myself without ever feeling like I measured up. If you're curious how this twisted tale unfolds, and trust me, it gets wild, you'll want to stick around. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and hit that subscribe button, because by the end of this story, you won't look at love, family, or even Vienna the same way again. Let me rewind a little so you understand where I'm coming from. Sera and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the star of the show, the one whose report cards were pinned to the fridge while mine disappeared into drawers. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate her. In fact, despite everything, I've always admired her confidence. But admiration doesn't erase resentment, does it? When we both moved to Portland after college, things shifted. We became closer than ever before, bonding over late-night wine sessions and shared dreams of success. Or at least that's what I told myself. Looking back now, maybe I ignored the warning signs. Maybe I should have paid attention when she started borrowing my clothes more often or asking intrusive questions about Callan. But hindsight's 20/20, right? At the time, I chalked it up to sibling rivalry mixed with genuine affection. Little did I know those small moments would snowball into something far darker. It all started innocently enough, or so it seemed. One evening, Callan announced he'd be heading to Vienna for a week-long marketing conference. Just another work trip, he said with that signature smile of his. He kissed me goodbye and promised to bring back something special. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, these trips were routine for him. Still, something gnawed at me, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispering, what if? The next day, Sera stopped by unannounced. She flopped onto our couch, scrolling through Instagram like it was her full-time job. Ugh, Vienna sounds amazing, she sighed dramatically. Why does Callan get to travel so much while I'm stuck here? I laughed it off, teasing her about her wanderlust, but her words lingered long after she left. Why did Callan travel so much? And why did he seem distant lately, distracted by phone calls and emails I wasn't privy to? That night, as I tucked myself into bed alone yet again, I tried to shake off the unease creeping into my chest. It was probably nothing. Just stress, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. 3 days into Callan's trip, curiosity got the better of me. While cleaning out his suitcase, yes, I'm one of those people, I stumbled across something unusual. A receipt from a high-end jewelry store. The date on it was recent, just days before he left. My heart skipped a beat. What exactly had he bought? I texted him immediately. Hey, did you pick up something nice for me? His response came quickly but not convincingly. Oh, that. It's a gift for a client. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Those 2 words echoed in my head like a bad song. Since when did Callan buy expensive gifts for clients? Something about his answer didn't sit right with me, but I shoved the thought aside. After all, paranoia isn't a great look on anyone. Still, the receipt stayed tucked in my pocket, a silent reminder that something wasn't adding up. By day 5 of Callan's trip, my gut instinct was screaming louder than ever. Then out of nowhere, an email landed in my inbox, an automated confirmation notice for a wedding venue in Vienna. My blood ran cold. A wedding? In Vienna? On the exact dates Callan claimed he'd be working? I called him instantly, my voice shaking. Callan, what's going on? There's an email here about a wedding. He hesitated, then laughed nervously. Oh, that must be a mistake. Someone at the office probably used my email by accident. His explanation sounded rehearsed, hollow. But instead of pressing further, I hung up, too stunned to argue. Later that evening, Sera texted me, "Why did Callan block my number?" My stomach dropped. Block her number? Why would he do that? I confronted her, demanding answers. She swore she only reached out because he hadn't been responding to her messages either. Lies upon lies. It felt like quicksand pulling me under. I couldn't take it anymore. The questions, the doubts, the nagging feeling that I was losing my grip on reality. It consumed me. Without thinking twice, I booked a last-minute flight to Vienna under the guise of surprising Callan. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I'd walk in on him presenting some boring PowerPoint slide deck. But when I arrived at the venue listed in the email, my world shattered. There he was, at the altar, standing beside none other than Sera. She wore a flowing white dress, her hair cascading in loose waves. They exchanged vows as if nothing else existed outside their bubble. Tears streamed down my face as I stood frozen, unable to move or breathe. How could they? How could they? After the ceremony, I barged into the reception hall like a hurricane. Glasses clinked, guests cheered, and then silence fell as they saw me. Callan's face turned pale. Sera's hands flew to her mouth. Chaos erupted as I screamed, "What is this?" Sera stammered, "Aria, I swear I didn't know he was married." Meanwhile, Callan stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Baby, it's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? Really?" Their excuses collided in a cacophony of betrayal. Callan admitted he'd manipulated us both, spinning lies to keep us apart while stringing us along. As the truth sank in, I realized the man I loved never truly existed. He was a mirage, a fabrication built on deceit. I don't remember much about the flight back to Portland. It's all a blur of tears, clenched fists, and sheer disbelief. The moment I landed, I filed for divorce. No hesitation, no second guessing. I couldn't bear the thought of sharing my life with someone who had so casually torn it apart. For the first time in years, I moved out of the house Callan and I had shared, crashing at my best friend Harper's apartment instead. Harper was furious on my behalf, calling Callan every name in the book while shoving tubs of ice cream into my hands. "You deserve better," she kept saying, her voice firm but kind. But did I? That question haunted me. Was I too trusting? Too blind to see the cracks in our marriage? And then there was Sera, or rather the ghost of her. She stopped answering my calls, disappearing from my life as if she'd never been part of it. I told myself I didn't care, that she wasn't worth another thought. But deep down, her betrayal cut just as deeply as Callan's. How could she stand there, promising forever, knowing full well what it would cost me? The divorce process was ugly, messier than I ever imagined. Callan hired some high-powered attorney who specialized in dragging cases out until the other side gave up. Lucky for him, he had money to burn. Me. I was scraping together every penny I had to fight back. Our lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Evelyn Pierce, became my lifeline. She assured me we had the upper hand since Callan's actions amounted to fraud. Still, the legal battle felt endless. Every document request, every deposition, it was like reliving the trauma over and over again. At night, I'd lie awake replaying the wedding scene in Vienna, wondering how I hadn't seen the signs sooner. Hadn't I known him at all? Or had I simply refused to look closer? Things took a turn when a local news outlet picked up the story. Someone, probably one of Callan's bitter colleagues, leaked details about the Vienna wedding scandal. Suddenly, my private nightmare became public property. Headlines screamed things like "Marketing exec juggles 2 wives," and "Sister versus sister. Love triangle turns toxic." Strangers slid into my social media DMs, offering unsolicited advice or accusing me of exaggerating the situation. Some even sided with Sera, claiming she was the real victim here. It was exhausting, infuriating, and humiliating all at once. Harper suggested I delete my accounts, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I scrolled through comments late at night, searching for validation that I wasn't the crazy one. Spoiler alert. That strategy didn't help. One evening, Sera finally reached out. Her text was short and shaky. "Aria, please talk to me. I need to explain." My finger hovered over the block button before I sighed and replied, "Fine. One chance. Don't waste it." We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from prying eyes. She looked terrible, puffy eyes, unwashed hair, and clothes that hung loosely on her frame. "I swear I didn't know he was married," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He told me you wanted space, that you were done with him. I didn't think. I mean, I should've." her voice broke, and for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. Not after this. I left the cafe without giving her any promises, unsure if forgiveness was even possible. As the trial dragged on, more skeletons tumbled out of Callan's closet. Text messages revealed he'd been planning his double life for months, carefully orchestrating lies to pit Sera and me against each other. He'd convinced Sera that I was emotionally abusive, pushing her toward him as her safe haven. Meanwhile, he fed me stories about Sera meddling in our marriage, planting seeds of doubt. The courtroom drama reached its peak when Evelyn presented evidence of financial manipulation. Callan had secretly drained joint accounts to fund his lavish lifestyle. The judge's expression said it all: disgust. For the first time, I saw cracks in Callan's polished facade. His confident smirk faltered as reality closed in around him. Despite everything, Sera refused to give up on repairing our relationship. She showed up at Harper's door one rainy afternoon, drenched and desperate. "Please, Aria," she begged. "Let me make this right." Against my better judgment, I let her in. Over cups of tea, she confessed everything. How Callan had manipulated her, how she'd ignored red flags because she wanted to believe he truly loved her. By the end of her confession, I realized something painful but important. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't entirely guilty either. "I'll try," I said softly. "But don't expect miracles." She nodded, understanding that forgiveness wouldn't come easily, or quickly. Callan's downfall was swift and merciless. Once the truth came out, his career imploded. Clients dropped him, colleagues distanced themselves, and his reputation crumbled. Without his charm and connections, he was nothing. A shadow of the man he pretended to be. I ran into him once at a grocery store months later. He looked gaunt, his suit replaced by faded jeans and a hoodie. When he saw me, he opened his mouth to speak, but I turned away before he could say a word. Whatever he wanted, to apologize, to justify himself, it didn't matter anymore. I was done. With the divorce finalized, I decided it was time to focus on myself. I threw myself into my art, channeling my pain into creativity. I started a blog called Chaos and Canvas, sharing my journey through heartbreak and healing. To my surprise, people connected with my story. Strangers began reaching out, thanking me for putting words to their own experiences of betrayal and loss. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't just a victim of circumstance. Maybe I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. The day of the final court hearing arrived, and I felt like I was walking into battle. Callan sat across from me, his once perfect suit wrinkled and ill-fitting. He tried to plead his case, claiming he'd made a mistake but still loved me. "Aria," he said, his voice trembling, "I never meant to hurt you. Can't we start over?" I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something heavy at his smug face. But instead I took a deep breath and spoke calmly, each word deliberate. "You don't get to rewrite history, Callan. You destroyed my trust, and for what? A lie. 2 lies. Whatever this was, it's over. For good." The judge ruled in my favor, granting me full control over our shared assets and leaving Callan with nothing. As he left the courtroom defeated and broken, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. It was done. Finally. That night I went home and started a fire. Not metaphorically but literally. I gathered every photo of Callan and me, every card he'd ever given me, every memento of our life together, and burned them in the backyard. Harper stood beside me, handing me items one by one as I tossed them into the flames. "This feels oddly satisfying," she said with a smirk, passing me a framed picture of our wedding day. I hesitated for a moment before throwing it in. Watching the glass crackle and blacken, I realized something profound. Letting go wasn't about forgetting. It was about reclaiming myself. By sunrise, there was nothing left but ash and freedom. With the weight of betrayal finally lifted, I decided to make a drastic change. I sold the house Callan and I had shared, keeping the proceeds obviously, and booked a one-way ticket to Paris. Why Paris? Because it sounded romantic, cliché, and exactly what I needed. A fresh start far away from everything that reminded me of him. In Paris, I rented a tiny studio apartment overlooking the Seine. The city buzzed with energy, its streets alive with artists painting on sidewalks and musicians playing soulful tunes. I enrolled in a local art class, immersing myself in a community of creatives who understood the language of vulnerability. Slowly but surely I began to rebuild, not just my career but my sense of self-worth. One crisp autumn morning I met Gabriel. He was sitting at a cafe near Notre Dame, sketching strangers as they passed by. His dark curls were tousled and his hands moved effortlessly across the page. When he noticed me watching, he grinned and held up his sketchpad. "Want to sit for me?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Only if you promise not to make me look ugly." He winked. "Deal." Gabriel became a constant presence in my life, showing up with croissants on rainy mornings, dragging me to flea markets on weekends, and encouraging me to submit my work to galleries. Unlike Callan, whose charm masked deceit, Gabriel wore his heart on his sleeve. There were no games, no secrets, just honesty. But could I trust again? That question lingered even as I found myself falling for him. Sera reached out again, this time via email. She apologized yet again, promising she'd cut ties with Callan completely. Enclosed with her message was a small package, a handmade scrapbook filled with photos of us growing up. On the first page she'd written, "For all the memories we lost along the way." It was a peace offering, and though I didn't respond immediately, I kept the scrapbook on my desk. Seeing those old pictures reminded me of happier times, of who we used to be before jealousy and manipulation tore us apart. Eventually I called her and we talked for hours. Forgiveness didn't come overnight, but it felt like a start. Back in Portland, Callan faded into obscurity. Rumor had it he was working odd jobs, bartending, delivering packages, anything to scrape by. Gone was the polished executive. In his place was a man haunted by his own choices. I ran into Evelyn, my lawyer, at a coffee shop months later. She smiled knowingly when I mentioned him. "Karma's a bitch," she said simply. As much as I wanted to gloat, I realized I didn't care anymore. His downfall wasn't my victory, it was proof that actions have consequences. And while I couldn't undo the past, I could choose how to move forward. My blog gained traction faster than I expected, leading to opportunities I'd never dreamed of. A publisher approached me about turning my posts into a memoir titled Chaos and Canvas: Finding Beauty in Brokenness. Writing it was cathartic, forcing me to confront every painful memory and celebrate every triumph. When the book hit shelves, it became a bestseller. Readers connected with my raw honesty, and soon I was invited to speak at conferences and workshops. People told me my story gave them hope, that they too could rise above their pain. It was humbling, empowering, and everything I needed to close this chapter of my life. One evening, Gabriel surprised me with dinner on the rooftop of his building. Candlelight flickered against the Paris skyline as he poured red wine and handed me a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the words, "New Beginnings." "I know it's scary," he said softly, "to open your heart after everything you've been through. But I want you to know, I'm here. No games, no lies. Just me." Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded. For the first time in years, I let myself believe in love again. Not blindly but cautiously, with boundaries and trust earned over time. Gabriel wasn't Callan, and that made all the difference. Christmas rolled around, and despite my initial reluctance, I flew back to Portland to visit Sera. We spent the holiday baking cookies, laughing until our sides hurt, and reminiscing about childhood memories. It wasn't perfect. We tiptoed around certain topics, but it was progress. Our parents noticed the shift between us, commenting on how much closer we seemed. "Maybe some things are worth fighting for," Mom said one evening, squeezing my hand. I nodded, realizing she was right. Family isn't always easy, but it's worth holding on to, even if it means forgiving imperfections. The last scene of my story takes place in my Paris studio. Sunlight streams through the window as I paint, music playing softly in the background. My canvas is vibrant, alive with color, a stark contrast to the darkness I once felt. On the wall hangs the bracelet Gabriel gave me, alongside sketches and notes pinned haphazardly. I pause mid-stroke, stepping back to admire my work. It's messy, imperfect, but undeniably mine. As I sign my name in the corner, I reflect on how far I've come, from betrayal to hope, from chaos to clarity. Life doesn't erase scars, but it gives us the tools to heal them. And sometimes, losing everything is the first step toward finding yourself. So here's to new beginnings, second chances, and the beauty of starting over. Cheers.